Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you for a very special Steelers preview podcast. And it's special because we're on Wednesday. Normally we're a Thursday show, but it's Wednesday. Why? The Steelers play on Thursday night against the Minnesota Vikings in Week 14. And we are here to talk about that game. Joining me as always, Bryan Anthony Davis, our podcast producer. What's up, Bryan?
Hey, I'm glad to be here no matter what night of the week it is. As long as I don't find my name in the obituaries, I'm feeling pretty good. Good.
It's always a plus. It is always a positive. Dave Schofield, the editor. What's up, Dave?
Hey, I'm ready to get this Thursday game over with because once it's done, you get that nice mini bye. It'll be nicer to roll into it with a win. So let's see if we can get that.
Well, let's start off. What are your all's thoughts on Thursday Night Football in general? And I mean as a fan, not as a player, because we are not players. So, Bryan, I'll start with you. What's your thoughts on Thursday Night Football? Like it, love it, indifferent?
As a kid, I thought it was the greatest thing ever. I also thought Monday Night Football was too. Now, as an adult, I hate it. I mean, it just disrupts everything for me. And it kind of ruins Sundays for me, like the bye ruins Sundays for me too. And even when they play Sunday Night Football, I hate it because it's a Sunday afternoon without football.
It's a good point. Dave, what about you? Thursday nights.
I like it when it's not the Steelers. I like having options on Mondays, even though I don't always watch the game. Depends on who's playing, depends on what's going on. Same with Thursdays. I like those two options to know that I don't have to go forever without NFL football. I don't like it when it's the Steelers. I don't like them having the compressed week. This isn't even from a BTSC perspective, just in general, knowing that guys that were injured, chances are they're not going to be able to play on Thursday and things like that. I feel there's too many other factors involved rather than which team is better in order to win the game based on a Thursday. I will preach this from the mountaintops, or shout it from the mountaintops, maybe I should say, or preach it. I could do either. That the NFL should start 1 week sooner and end at the same time and give every team a bye the week before they play on Thursday. It would alleviate so many problems with things of that nature. But at the same time, I don't like it when it's the Steelers just because it's too much.
I can be honest and say that my disdain for any game that's not Sunday at 1:00 is strictly based on Behind the Steel Curtain because it throws everything off. It's late night. People that are just like my dad, he's like, oh, it's 11 o'clock. I'm just going to go to bed. Nah, the three of us know we're up till at least 2 a.m.
Yep.
So
I'm usually up. I'm usually up till 3:30 at least, if not 4. Yeah.
And so when you're up that late and you're trying to function, then the next day you're a zombie and it feels like you're catching up for the whole week. It's awful. So my overall disdain for Thursday Night Football and for Monday Night Football and for Sunday Night Football, and even now, even some 4:25 kickoffs, I'm literally like an old man. I swear. But it's because of the job. It's a job.
7:30 p.m.
I know. Blue plate special. That's what we need. All right, as my grandmother once said, enough dilly-dally, and let's get to the meat and potatoes of the podcast, which is it's a short week, but it's a huge opportunity for the Steelers versus the Vikings. Before we get to this, I want to talk about the AFC Playoff Picture. I write this article weekly. I just started it this week. Bryan throws this into his rooting guide, but I kind of put it in during the week so the fans kind of get a look of what's coming up. And then Bryan obviously hits it again with the rooting guide. And the AFC Playoff Picture right now, the New England Patriots are 1, Tennessee Titans 2, Baltimore Ravens 3, Kansas City Chiefs 4, 5 is the LA Chargers, 6 is the Bengals, 7 are the Bills, and Steelers are 8. And everyone always says, oh my gosh, the Steelers' schedule is tough. And it is. But so are a lot of these teams. Like, just listen to the Patriots. They have to go this week at Indy, then Buffalo again, Jacksonville, and then they go to Miami to finish it up. Miami's playing good football right now. Keep that in mind. Tennessee, the Jacksonville, They go to Pittsburgh, San Francisco, Miami. Tough games. Baltimore. They have at Cleveland, Green Bay, Cincinnati, the Rams, and then Pittsburgh again. Kansas City has the Raiders, the Chargers, the Steelers, the Bengals, the Broncos. There's a lot of divisional games there. The Chargers, they might have the easiest road to host, so to speak. The Giants, the Chiefs, the Texans, the Denver Broncos, and the Raiders. The Bengals are the 49ers, the Broncos, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Browns, and the Bills, Tampa Bay, Carolina, New England, Atlanta, the New York Giants, the New York Jets, I'm sorry, but all I'm trying to say is here, people, there were people in the comments of this article that were thinking, oh my gosh, the Steelers have to win out. Am I the only one that thinks that the Steelers could even drop a couple games and still be right in the thick of things because of the way this AFC has been so far this year? Brian, you're the guy that does a rooting guide. What do you think?
Yeah, no more than 2, but you'd like them to go 4-1 the rest of the way. A lot of people are looking at Kansas City as a juggernaut right now, and that's actually that's a game that you can afford to lose. And I know can't afford to lose any, but if you're going to lose any of them, that's the most losable game, and that's the one you could probably afford to lose, because a lot of those teams are playing each other. A lot of them are in disarray. I think the Bills, the Ravens, and the Cleveland Browns, they've got an arrow pointing down. The Steelers play a team that is not as strong as they were in the first half of the season. Also, next week, in the form of the Tennessee Titans. So it gets a whole lot more interesting. And the great thing about this schedule is they're decent teams. They're good teams. Steelers do better against good teams than they do with a slate of the Lions and the Jets and the Bears and teams that you're like, they should romp on. So I would almost think in this point that the schedule almost favors the Steelers in a little bit.
But even in this topsy-turvy AFC where the Jets beat the Bengals after the Bengals were declared the cream of the crop in the AFC, the Texans beating who did they beat? The Titans or the Bills or one of those teams? But
the Titans.
You're like, where in the world are these games coming from? These have been commonplace in 2021. So don't ever assume any team's going to beat any team based on what you see on paper. But Dave, what do you think about the Steelers' chances down the stretch here?
I think the Steelers play the Minnesota Vikings tomorrow night, and that is all that matters.
Here we go.
I'm sorry. One game at a time. No,
our fans. We can look ahead.
No, you were right. There's a lot. I mean, no team in the AFC has less than 4 losses. None. So, and a lot of these teams still play each other. So there's a lot of things that can play out. But if you take care of business, you don't have to worry what everybody else does.
Yeah.
So that's the most important thing. And the reason this is the most important is, yes, the Steelers are underdogs, and yet this is the only team that doesn't have a winning record that they have left on the schedule. So they've got to take care of this. If they don't take care of business this week, even as underdogs, they could get on a roll on the last 4, but they're just going to put themselves in a worse place. So let's get this one going, and let's get Dave, this one.
Why don't you start off with the title and what we're talking about tonight, and that is the opportunity that the Steelers have this week, even though it's a short week, in a lot of different ways. What are your thoughts when you think about the opportunity that faces the Steelers right now?
Yeah, I had to look at that. I had to remember what the title was. It's a huge opportunity.
I just read it to you.
I know. Thank you. I appreciate that. I can't read for myself, so I appreciate that, Jeff. I never learned to read. Sorry.
Is that true?
No.
Everything but the reading part.
Everything with the reading part. This is an opportunity because it's a tough place to be because you're going on the road on a Thursday. If you can win on the road on a Thursday, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on, if you know what I mean. That's a big deal to get a road victory on a Thursday on the short week, especially coming off of playing a divisional opponent like the Ravens. But the most important thing, the big opportunity that they have is to show which team are they. Because if you look at not Sunday's game, but the Sunday before, there's that Pittsburgh Steelers team. Then you have this Pittsburgh Steelers team that still without being a perfect game, still waiting for them to bring it all together for a whole game on both sides of the ball. Hasn't happened. But being able to come through and make the plays when they need to, is that the team this team is? Or are they something else? So if you can start stacking performances like you had on Sunday, that's the opportunity, because you don't want beating the Baltimore Ravens at home to be your climax. You don't want that to be the top of the mountain. That's not the peak. That's the start of the journey up the mountain. You want to keep ascending from there. To me, this is an opportunity to ascend, and that's what they need to do tomorrow night.
Brian, what's your thoughts on that in terms of the opportunity the Steelers have this Thursday night? Good Lord, I don't know what day it is.
I think this is the game that sets everything up for the Steelers for a run. I keep on saying, let's party like it's 2005. Now, I've got to realize that those are completely 2 different teams. And the talent on defense they weren't as beat up, and it's a whole lot different. But this is what kind of sets you up for that stretch run, because this is a weird game that you just can't put your thumb on. It's really tough because the Minnesota Vikings have some interesting players on that team, but they were beat up and hurt. And you have the factor, what did the Detroit Lions do to this team? Did the Detroit Lions sink their psyche, or did they make them mad? Because the Minnesota Vikings are the Pittsburgh Steelers of a week ago going into this game.
Just so happens in 2005, they did go to Minnesota and it was week 15. That was the game Ben had to wear that was when it was announced he had to wear that thing in his glove because he broke his thumb. Wasn't that the game? Yeah, because I remember watching NFL primetime after they won. Ben scrambled to the left, dove for the pylon, gets in, and Chris Berman said, "Under my thumb," like the Rolling Stones. And I was like, that's perfect. Chris Berman's the freaking best. The mini buy. Let me ask you this, Dave. The mini buy, do you really think that? I mean, I understand it's a thing, but do you think that's really valuable in the terms of, the Steelers? I mean, think about someone like Joe Hayden, which, by the way, if you want to read the injury report and who's ruled out of this game, by all means, go ahead.
You want me to go ahead and read it?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and read what the players that are out. That's all we need.
Oh, the players are out are the only 4 players that didn't practice yesterday or today, and that is Joe Hayden, not coming back, who missed last week. Isaiah Buggs, not coming back, who missed last week. BJ Finney left last week's game early, and Robert Spillane, who was on the COVID list last week, but we all knew he was going to be injured for the game anyway. He's off a COVID list. He can now get his treatment in Pittsburgh at the facility, but he's out for the game as well. Everybody else, full participant the last 2 days, ready to go. To me, that's big that the Steelers didn't have guys that were quote unquote really banged up after playing the Ravens. That was a big deal, but that's who's out for them. And then for Minnesota, the players that are out, we'll go ahead and throw it out there. Adam Thielen's out. Where's it Thielen? Is that what I know? Isn't that how Tomlin pronounced it on Tuesday? It kind of threw me off. Or not, it wasn't even Tuesday. It was Monday. What am I saying? His conference was on Monday. But Thielen's out. Darrisaw was out, which means their offensive line shifted around again. And Dalvin Cook is questionable. Apparently he was limited again today. That would be a really surprising thing with that injury that he'd be back already.
But in regards to the little mini buy, I mean,
yeah,
players talk about it, but I mean, really, they come back on Friday, they just have the weekend, and then they get right back to work. I just don't know if there's much value in that.
Jeff, I know you had that beautiful game-winning pick 6 in middle school.
I did.
But that was middle school when your bodies was younger and you could recover a little bit better. There is a big difference think about Monday morning when they come back to the facility. If they're there for treatment or anything. They're not coming in the day after playing a game. They will have already had 3 days off.
That's true.
Usually Ben Roethlisberger takes 3 days off before he throws again. So, and that would be Monday morning. Usually when guys are coming in, the day after the game, that's a big deal. So it's, the Steelers had an early bye, but to have this late mini bye, especially when you're looking at like a Joe Hayden, I know Brian's just waiting to talk. Even maybe Kevin Dotson could possibly come back off of IR after the mini bye, depending on how he's coming. That could be a really big thing for this team.
Brian, thoughts on that?
Teachers and kids alike always look at the calendar to see where Christmas is, because when Christmas is on a Friday or a Saturday, you get a couple more days off after Christmas, and that's a big deal. And they're not superb athletes, but it's more rest. Now that day you go back, you're like, I'm dying because it's the first day off, first day back after 10. So I kind of look at it this way. I'm going to kind of piggyback on Dave on that too. That helps. That's now us at BTSC. We don't want the mini buy. We want it to help the Steelers, but we want everything to be on schedule.
Yeah, for real. Let's do this. Tom Muir gives us $5. I appreciate the tip. We all appreciate the tip. He said, aside from the Steelers playing down to the Vikings, questionable statement, what scares you the most about this game? That's a really good question. I have to be honest. I don't know a lot about the Minnesota Vikings. I listened to Bryan Anthony Davis and KT Smith doing the pregame show, which is on our podcast platform right now. Whenever you're listening to this, whether it's live on Facebook or YouTube, you can go to our podcast platform and listen to it. I learned more about the Vikings there than I had all season because outside of the household names, Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, I don't know much about this team. But Dave, I'll ask you, answer the question that Tom posed. What scares you the most about the Vikings?
What scares me the most, I'm going to say about this game being on a Thursday, is that you're lucky if you get 60% of your game plan ready, both in offense and defense. Now, when that comes to offense, I'm not as worried about that. Just let BTR be BTR. I talked about this on Stat Geek. It's recorded. It'll be out Thursday morning. So I recorded it right before we did this. So I talked about that a little bit. But I'm a little bit concerned about the defense if they only have 60% of their game plan going against this Minnesota offense. So are they going to be more vanilla? Are they not going to be able to do some of the things they might have been able to try to do otherwise on a short week? That's my biggest concern with this game, is the Steelers defense matching up with Minnesota's offense on the short week.
Brian, what about you? What scares you the most about the Vikings this Thursday night?
Sometimes Kirk Cousins could be a world beater. He'll have a couple games where he just comes out and he's great. And then you have all the confidence in the world in the guy. And then he's ho-hum Kirk Cousins. A lot of people in the live chat are saying, man, TJ Watt could really rattle Cousins, and he does not like to get hit, and he's suspect to drop the ball. And that's something that KT was talking about as well on the pregame show. So, I would say it's that he can get hot. KT also said something yesterday that was really important. It was about Dalvin Cook, because I wanted to ask him what's going on with the shoulder. How does that affect your game? He said it doesn't affect your game, but it's the threshold of pain that you can stand, because that beating that shoulder takes, then there's not much he can do because he's running with his body. But I'm like, what about when you bear down and have to drive with your shoulder? He's like, it's all about the pain. So there's that, and there's the defensive side of the ball. There's some strong names on that defensive side. Harrison Smith and Patrick Peterson and Kendricks, and don't forget about Danelle Hunter, who a lot of people don't know about Danelle Hunter, but he's really good. He's up there as one of the better pass rushers in the game. So he's a guy to look at too. This is going to be a really fun game to watch, but it's all about what kind of Viking team, like I said before, comes out. Like who do they want to be there? Because they're talking about getting rid of coaches, and they're talking about getting rid of head coaches and general managers, and there's disarray. But when you look at it, this is a team that could really knock you down, and one of the best young wideouts in the game right now in Justin Jefferson.
So Dave, you brought up the 60%.
And that's just a number I think of. You know what I mean?
Fine. That's fine. You bring up the 60% thing, and so it makes me think how they match up. And so I think about, this was a game I watched some of the Ravens play the Vikings. The Vikings jumped out to an early lead. I want to say they had a 21-point lead at halftime and ended up blowing that lead. The Ravens were able to get to Cousins, and it did affect him. Did the Steelers defense just put all their eggs in that pass rush basket and say, we just need to blitz the heck out of this guy? I think without Thielen, you almost have to. You have, because if they only have, and I don't know anyone else, so I could be wrong, but they only have Justin Jefferson, wouldn't that be the wise thing to do?
I'm going to say yes, but for a different reason of getting there.
Okay.
I'm going to get there because I think on a short week, you rely on your very best players and your superstars. So that defense should be relying on TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and Minkah Fitzpatrick. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those are the things that you should fall back to when you can't get everything else done. You just fall back on your playmakers to make plays. You want Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger making your plays for the offense, and you want those guys making your plays for the defense. And the best way to do that is to just let TJ go at him. And to me, I think that would be a good game plan for that reason.
Now, Brian, I want to ask you about the offense. I asked Dave about the defense. Offensively, I mean, are you just letting BTR sling the rock? I mean, what's your approach against this Vikings defense that you just spoke about?
Well, you have the advantage right now that you've got a Najee Harris that knows how to run the ball, and he's learning more and more, and you could ride him. And so you could mix it up with the running game and with BTR. You could basically, what you can do is you can take the game plan that you had against the Ravens. I know they're going to be looking at it, but the same type of thing. You don't have to get too cute. You can just really Matt Canada it up with what you've had that you didn't use against the Ravens, and you could heavy doses of Najee mixed in with Ben doing his thing. Now, if I'm going to piggyback off of Dave with relying on your stars, so look for a heavy dose of Benny Snell Jr. and Ray McLeod this week.
You're like me. I swear, like when I saw the Ravens were the 32nd pass defense last week, I thought they're going to come out and just try to run it right down their throat because it's like they seriously outthink themselves. It was a little bit more balanced than that, but still, that's a still. I guess is that Randy Land that's affected us that much? Was it like PTSD with Randy Fiedner as the coordinator? I don't know. That's what I feel like sometimes. Okay, let's talk about Trent Jordan-Watt for a second. He won the AFC Player of the Week today for his performance in Week 13 against the Baltimore Ravens. Defensive Player of the Week. Thank you.
He was good enough. He should have been named for offense too.
He could have. He was that good. But Dave, you put his contract numbers into your Vertex today, right?
I only did because of the title you suggested to me.
No, but so
but I did.
What are those numbers? Do you have them?
Well, I was doing this, like the salary cap hit. His cap hit this year is small. It's smaller than it would have been if he wouldn't have signed the contract. So he's got a big hit next year, but it's $31 million. Just over $31 million. And they could restructure that and kick it into the future if they really need to. But next year might be the year to just take that on. It's still not up what they were given the quarterback position a couple years ago. So, I mean, it's even, you know what I'm saying? Even this year when it was a down quarterback year for the Steelers because of Ben taking the pay cut and everything, it was still, at least close to that. So I threw the numbers in there, but I don't think, I think he's worth every penny.
But here's why. I said when he signed the contract, I remember I was at the beach and you all were covering the news and stuff, and I was reading it, and everyone's like, they paid him too much money. Oh, my gosh, too much. I said, there's going to come a time where you're going to see this is a deal. This is a steal of a deal. Certain players tend to do that. Antonio Brown, when he got his big contract, which at the time was a big contract for him, when they didn't pay Mike Wallace, they gave it to Antonio Brown. He outplayed that contract in 2 years? And everyone's like, wow, like he's really outplaying his contract. I think that TJ Watt's on his way to that. Like, we're going to look back at this contract and say, dang, like they're only paying TJ Watt that much. Brian, you think he's worth every penny, right?
Absolutely. To quote the great Gunnar Stahl and Kenny Wu from Mighty Ducks 2, instead of 2 minutes, I'm going to say 31 million well spent.
Woo, woo, Kenny Woo.
I knew I'd get you go.
Okay, I have to can I change? I got to change the subject for just a minute because I have to ask Bad something. You're talking about pass rushers and stuff like that, and I look at Minnesota. What did you say something about Danelle Hunter, Brian?
Yes, is he out?
He's out for the season. He's on IR and out for the season. He got knocked out the beginning of November. You brought that name up. I'm like, I don't remember seeing him anywhere. So then I started. I was.
You know what's great about that? Yeah. You know what? So I can be embarrassed about that, but that's how much attention I pay to the NFC North. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Danelle Hunter's good.
He is,
but
the Steelers won't have to deal with him.
So it's just like maybe he'll do what I thought Marcus Peters would do last week, being gone for the year and still sucker punch somebody. And but Danelle Hunter's a good guy though, so I would doubt that. So all right, we're not going to talk about Danelle Hunter. I think he's great though.
Okay.
And all right, so that does it for our credibility. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Steelers preview.
Just because I've covered the injury report, I'm like, I think he'd been injured, but I never saw him on the report, so I had to go look it up. And I'm like, because I thought maybe he was Patrick Peterson, who came back this week, where he had been out. Yeah. He's back for him, but no. From what I found, he's out for the season.
Well, I guess I'm not going to
Hunter
slip
is,
one
yeah.
past the goalie there.
Unless it's Goldberg, you'll get one by him.
Yeah.
Mark Andre Schofield over there. Big save with a beauty.
Julie the cat. He's Julie the
Julie
cat.
the
Okay.
If anyone's listening to this or watching this and has never seen Mighty Ducks 2, you need to go watch it to get half of the jokes for this entire podcast.
Go get him, Julie.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is a good time to take a break. We'll be right back. If you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, we're not going anywhere. Stay tuned. If you're on podcast, go over to part 2. We're going to talk about predictions, over, under, and more. We'll be right back. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to the second part of the Steelers preview, where we are previewing Danelle Hunter and his upcoming impact on the Steelers game.
He's the X Factor, like BJ.
He is the X Factor.
Oh, my.
It's going to be Dave's X Factor in the article tomorrow.
Thanks for tipping me off to that one there, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, nice.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
So,
All right.
I have something I wanted to ask you guys real quick.
Yeah, do it.
I'm thinking of three main players that were called upon for the significantly for the first time on Sunday in Ahkello Witherspoon. He had played a few snaps, but this was his first start with the Steelers. Montravius Adams in his first game with the Steelers, and John LeGlue in only his second week being called up from the Steelers, but his first game action. All three of those came in and played well. Do you think we're jumping the gun too much to expect it all the time right away? Do you think, how disappointing is it going to be? Think of even Robert Spillane. He came in last year when Devin Bush went out. Then he had the big tackle on Derrick Henry. And then he kind of fell off a little bit. Should we be pumping the brakes on these guys and give them another game to see what they can show before we get too excited? Or what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, it is. It's because of the positions they play, that it's the positions of need, and that, you need to pump the brakes a little bit. Although I will say that I thought last year Spillane carried out that 2020 season pretty strong. Remember, he had
until he got hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
He had the pick 6 against Baltimore, and then he got hurt, and that changed everything. But he was never the same. Even remember this training camp, we're like, what the heck happened to Robert Spillane? He's like a shell of himself. If these players could give that type of effort and just get them through this season, and maybe we as fans need to remember Robert Spillane after the season and say it's no guarantee that this player is going to be what we think they're going to be next season. But I definitely, with Ahkello Witherspoon, need to see it more than once. Everywhere he's gone, they said consistency is the main problem. He will look like one of the best cornerbacks in the league one week and look like he's never played the position before the next. And that's a big problem. LeGlue, I don't even know what to think. That to me, that guy just reads farts in a skillet, but you never know with him because was that Fietner or was that
was Fietner?
Yeah, of course that was Fietner. Farts
that was to me, that was Fietner trying to be Butler.
You ever heard that, Brian?
What kind of cookbook do you all have?
It was during a press conference last year. No, seriously, it was. I felt like he was trying to be cool. Cool, say cool phrases like Keith Butler, and he failed miserably.
And he failed. But so LeGlue, I hope he sticks. I hope he's the next Matt Filer, the next Ramon Foster, someone like that.
Going Brian sticks.
Yeah. So you also have to remember he went into that game thinking what might have happened the week before, and that is 0 snaps. That you're just the 8th guy in case he was the next guy on the interior and played so much. Now he's got to. I talked about this a little bit on Stat Geek. He's got to have the pressure of walking into the stadium knowing that he's going on the field. I think sometimes it's a little bit like they say with the backup quarterback. Sometimes when you don't have to think about your game plan and you're just thrown in and you got to run out there and do the job, you go out and do the job. And he sure did do the job. I would love nothing more to see him give just as good, if not a better performance this week, knowing what's ahead of him when he goes into it. But we'll see tomorrow night.
Well, real quick before we throw it to Brian, if I'm Mike Tomlin, I'm saying to John LeGlue or Adams, whatever his first name is, I can never remember for some reason.
Is it Montravius?
Montravius, I think. There you go.
Montravius.
Nailed it.
Davis.
Montravius Hartman. Next Hartman.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what I will name our next child. So those two players, I would, if I'm like telling like, hey guys, you are playing with house money right now. Like no one expected you to be here. No one has really any grand expectations, even after the first game. Just go out and play your best football. Just do the best you can. Don't put pressure on yourselves. My goodness, that's the worst thing you could do. But Bryan, to answer Dave's question, I'd love to hear what you think.
The thing with a guy like LeGlue is he's reminding a lot of us right now of a young Alejandro Villanueva because of his size, or Matt Filer, when you did not expect anything out of any of these guys. And next thing you know, then they had a breakout game where there was protection and things seemed good. And then next thing you know, he's in there for 16 weeks in a row. And you're like, all right, we've got something. We've seen the Steelers take a lot of undrafted free agents and guys that have never been drafted and turn them into very important parts of this team. The big Ragu is one guy, Ramon Foster, that I would definitely say was one of those guys that he came to camp, he had to keep on fighting and fighting and move up the depth chart, and next thing you know, you couldn't take him out of there. So that's what you're hoping with a guy like LeGlue, and Steeler fans are going to think that way because we've seen it happen before. Corners, we haven't seen that as much. So with a guy like that, Montravius Adams is another guy that, in the trenches, those hungry guys could really stick around as well. Because we've seen guys, Ray Seals was a guy that he was a defensive lineman. He never went to college. For that matter. And he had a really good career. You've got guys like Donald Evans that you didn't expect too much of, and you put them in there and they're starting on Super Bowl teams. So I really like what they have in those guys. I would expect if I were to take two of three that I thought that were going to be better than the third, I would trust more LeGlue and Adams than what we've seen out of Akello Witherspoon. But I'm hoping for Akello.
All right, Sean Manahan gave us $5. Thank you for the tip. We appreciate it. He said some breaking down film compare Adams to Gravedigger. He's talking about Javon Hargrave. I will say that tomorrow, Thursday, game day, or in the morning, you can check out Jeffrey Benedict's film room on Montravius Adams. And I wouldn't say there's a ton of similarities between the two. Jay Wobble is a different build, but Montravius Adams has a great jump off the ball. And Jeffrey does a great job.
He doesn't get pushed around.
No, he can take up more than one blocker. Like that's one of the primary jobs of a nose tackle is to just really occupy two. That allows someone like Bush Schobert to flow a little bit better. So check that out at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. You all ready for a little over-under game?
Oh yeah.
I went outside the box today. Okay, so there's some usual ones, but I went outside the box. Let's start with a little BTR, Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger attempts in this game. Just attempts. 38.5. 38.5. Bryan, over under.
Slightly over with the 40.
Ooh, okay. Dave, over under 38.5.
I'm going to go slightly under with 38. I called the under last week and I was right. So
yeah, I'm going to go under with like 35. I think it's going to be a lot lower. Najee Harris rushing yards, total rushing yards, not total yards, just rushing yards. 85.5. Bryan Anthony Davis, over under.
Well, with Danelle Hunter hurting, Najee Harris should be able to get the best out of Hunter and probably make him seem like he's not even there. So what we'll say is Najee, I it's prime time. I'm giving him a 100-yard game on prime time.
This is tough because I hadn't gotten to listen to the Stat Geek where Dave always breaks down their rankings and stuff. So that always helps me with the over under. I have not heard it because it's only Wednesday. Dave, so you're probably going to tell me they average like 120 yards defense, and so this number is really low. But go ahead.
How much the Vikings surrender?
What they average giving up on the ground? Yeah, rush defense.
How about 131.5?
I would have gone higher. All right, but I'm going to stick with 85.5 because that's
85.5. I'm going to go over this time, and I just have to bring up something. I'm very frustrated with one Bryan Anthony Davis.
Oh boy.
Who goes to Heinz Field, pays that much for a drink and doesn't use the little sticker to get your free refill, it's still on your freaking cup. Take a look at it.
Okay. All right. We're going to fight now. Because when I went to the Buffalo game.
Where did you steal that cup at the end of the game?
When I went to the Buffalo game and everybody's found out, Jeff's like, Dave said, hey, let's go take all the cups around us. So I've got like 14 of these babies from last week.
Okay, so that's what it's from? Okay.
Yeah. So they didn't do it. The people in your 122 club didn't do it, Dave.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
For those that are listening on podcasts that completely missed all that, Bryan is drinking in a cup that clearly came from Heinz Field. That clearly has some type of sticker on it that indicates you can get a free refill. And whoever had
didn't
said
wash
cup,
when he got home.
whoever had
I
said
sterilized
cup.
the heck out of it. My wife did it.
All right, so you said over, Dave?
I'm going over.
All right, I'm going to go over as well, but not by much. I think he's 90. I think 90 is the number. Here's an interesting one. Benny Snell carries. Okay, the amount of times that Benny Snell gets the ball and this is not touches, carries 4.5. Bryan Anthony Davis over under.
I'm going to say under, but I'm actually going to say 3 or 4. So he's going to get the ball, but they don't want to. They're not going to go completely away from Najee Harris. It's kind of like, remember when you were a kid and you were looking at batting averages of guys and you're like, wow, he's got a great batting average. He's like 375. And you see that he's only been up to bat 11 times. So it's kind of like that. The guy's great, but he's more of a pinch hitter. I mean, he's a great pinch hitter. So I'm not saying Snell, what's his name? Snell or something. I'm not saying Benny Snell football is great. I was talking about the pinch hitter. But what I'm saying is, man, he made me proud in that game. I was really happy to see him. He needed that. Because
under.
Yes, because when I was at this game, when I stole this cup, I wasn't trying to make anybody laugh, but they threw to him the first time. His first touch was through, and he dropped the ball. And I just exclaimed, and I didn't know I was doing it out loud. I just said, why is this guy on the team? And then everyone starts laughing, and I'm like, oh, that was out loud. I don't want to be that guy. But there's so many weeks we've said, why is this guy on the team? And last week we're like, okay, you get a hat.
All right, Dave, that's 4.5 carries, Benny Snell.
You're really good at picking these numbers, because when you first said Benny Snell carries, I'm thinking, I'm like, I think he might have 4 or 5. How do I go with that one? Okay, what I could say is like, if I could go with a very wishful thinking answer and say, if the Steelers can take care of business in this game and they get a lead, they might even want to just let Benny Snell finish it off and, give Najee some rest. So maybe that's a dream scenario. So let's go over just for fun, just in case that could happen. But otherwise I would have said it 4 or 5. So you did a good job with the number.
On a short week, thank you, by the way. On a short week, I'm going to go over. I'm going to think he's 5 or 6. I'm going to get 5 or 6 to him. Next, Pat Freiermuth receptions. So just catches. And I've been disappointed in this regard. I'm going to say 3.5. Bryan Anthony Davis over under.
I could say 5. So let's go over.
All right. Dave?
I was thinking 4. So 3.5. You're right there. So I'll go over.
I'm going to go I'm going over, hoping that it's over, because I wish they would target him more. Deontay Johnson targets. The number is 10.5. Over, under, Bryan.
Absolutely over. He is,
because he had 11 last week, I think.
He's got the Wi-Fi now. With the remember the old Wi-Fi? It's back, and it's with Ben.
I try to forget that Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
All right. No, but they are really, their connection's really good right now, and I think Ben is viewing Deontay Johnson as a number 1 receiver and his top option.
Dave, 10.5 targets, over, under.
I might as well go over. Just because I think, when in doubt, that's who Ben's going to look for. If not, he's going to have to look for Muth. So either way, I think those are going to be the 2 main guys. Claypool seems a little bit in Ben's doghouse. So I'm not sure. That's a good number again. I'll go over.
I'm going under. I think 9. Thinking nine times. Okay. Pittsburgh Steelers sacks of Mr. Cousins. I went with, again, these are just some of these games are just odd. I went with 3.5. Now that's what TJ did himself last week, but this is a different beast. Brian, over under.
I'd actually like to say a little bit over with 4. I'm not saying they're going to get the 7 that he did last week. I wanted to talk a lot about TJ Watt, but I never got a chance to when I got called out for something different, and I never got to talk about TJ Watt. So, but if he could,
the floor is yours if you want to talk about it.
I just want to say if he could pull together a game like he did last week again, and this might be a team that you could do it with a guy like Darrisaw out and guys changing around, then he should be the front runner for NFL Defensive Player of the Year. I know we're not talking about awards and stuff like that, but it's great to see. It's so fun to watch when you're a stat kid like me, that I'm a different kind of stat guy than Dave. I'm a stat guy that looks at, okay, what's the record and how many did they get? I'm the guy that you're watching the Super Bowl with. It doesn't matter what team. And I'm saying, oh, that's a Super Bowl record on a kickoff return. And people are like, and nobody even appeases me by going, oh, really? No, they just ignore me completely because it's the stupidest thing I ever said. But those are things that I enjoy. And so for him, I knew way before. I know Michael Beck tweeted it out. I knew way before he did because I just didn't tweet it out because I was too busy. But I've been tracking this 16 for years. And just like I'm tracking 80.5 with TJ, which is going to happen next year.
Yeah, we could see history. Am I right? If he gets just a half sack, then he sets the new single season record. Am I right?
Yep. And Michael Strahan could be in his view.
I hope he is. I don't like Michael Strahan. Okay, so Pittsburgh sacks. Dave, 3.5 over under.
I'm gonna go with the numbers, and I'm going to say under. I would love to see the Steelers get to it more. I think they can. The Vikings have not surrendered more than 3 sacks in a game all season. They have surrendered the second fewest sacks in the NFL so far this year. So, I mean, last week they gave up 3, and that was tied for the most since week 1. Before that, they'd only ever given up 1 or 2 or none. So I'd love to see the Steelers be able to break that. I just think it's a really big uphill battle for them to do it.
I'm going to say under with 3. So they would get 3, but 3.5 is the number. So I'm going to go under. Let's go Pittsburgh Steelers takeaways. They had 1 last week, another Minka Magic moment. I have it 1.5. Bryan Anthony Davis over under.
Man, if I'm Dave's Go West guy today, king of wishful thinking, I'm thinking they can get 2. I think Minka could get another one. Cousins is, if you get erratic Cousins, if you get rattled Cousins, let's put it more, and TJ could rattle Cousins, you've got a strip sack possibility. And don't forget, if Dalvin Cook doesn't play either, then there you have Antonio Madison, who's not bad. Is he still on the team, guys, or am I
no, let me look it up now, of course. Yeah.
I mean, or is it Herschel Walker that was
Mr. Walker Herschel?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah. So a backup is he's good, but he has the potential to get the ball knocked out by a guy like Cam too, or a guy like Wormley. So something can happen.
Dave, over under 1.5.
I'm going under. It would be great if the Steelers get 1. The Vikings give up the least amount of turnovers in the NFL. They've only given up 9 on the season. Wow. They really take care of the ball. So therefore, just getting 1 would be really good and really helpful.
I was going to go under anyways. So okay, now last one, Steelers turnovers. I have it set at 0.5. Brian, do they turn the ball over this week?
Yeah, they're on the road. They're going to turn over 1 time when Danelle Hunter sacks.
You keep bringing this up. We are not. Just so we're clear.
I can see 1.
All right. Go ahead, Dave. What
was your number again?
It was just
1.
0.5. It was 0.5.
I'm gonna go over. I really want to see this team playing clean football, and to me, going on the road on a short week, if you only have 1, that's a pretty good version of clean football. Most importantly, I'm fine as long as the margin is even. Just don't give it away more than you take it away.
They were clean last week. They're clean this week. I'm going to go under. Okay. Let's do predictions. Bryan Anthony Davis, I heard your prediction on the pregame show. I'm assuming it's still the same. Why don't you go ahead and talk it out here and give us your score? What's the line, Dave, by the way? It's still 3?
Let me refresh the page just to make sure that, the last I saw it was 3. It is still 3, and the over-under is 43.5.
Gosh, they're good. Man, that's like my dream job, to set over-under lines. That would be awesome. Okay, Brian, anyways, go ahead.
This is tough for me because I've already contradicted myself on the article, the staff article, where I picked the Steelers, and then I just picked against the Steelers on the pregame show.
He's got it all covered. No matter what he does, no matter what the Steelers do, he's covered.
I want to be, because the more that I think about it, I'm getting excited about the Steelers team. But for something that keeps going back in my head is Kirk Cousins having one of those games, like a Ryan Mallett game, even though he's a lot better than Ryan Mallett ever was. All I'm saying is I just feel like he's going to have one of those great games, and I'm not sold with the Steelers defense yet. So I've got to say 31-26. So we're going to go ahead with the Vikings on this, but I love when I'm wrong. And when I do pick against the Steelers, I'm wrong. So let's go with that.
There you go. All right, Dave, what do you think?
Well, I think that a lot of people are like on the Scobro show was putting in some pretty low scores because it's going to be sloppy on a Thursday. Sloppy doesn't always mean bad offense. Sloppy could mean bad defense. And to me, when you look on a short week, if you don't have your full game plan, to me, I say advantage Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger and advantage Kirk Cousins. Because he's a wily veteran, I would definitely say. So I'm thinking it's going to, and I could be completely wrong here, and this is exactly what I said on Stat Geek. I'm going to love it when it comes back when it's 12-10. But I'm going to go with a high-scoring game, and I'm going with the Steelers 31-23.
Ooh, wow. Okay, you're taking the over big time.
Yes, I am. But for like I was saying, that
I get it.
I feel that I mean, don't you just want to say, hey, Canada's going to speak into Ben's ear, set up a formation and the package, and you go up and you read and you do what you got to do, and you keep the offense moving on the field.
Well, to bring it to my prediction, there are times and there's teams where I don't know much about them. Like when the Steelers play the Ravens or the Browns, like fans, we know those teams so well. You can actually look into the team, the injuries, how it impacts them, what they want to do, how they want to attack you. I don't know much about anything about the Vikings, let alone on a short week when we're still giddy off of the win over the Ravens. So for me, what I do on these games is I take, okay, look at the positions, who has the better players. And probably 9 out of 10 positions, I'll take the Steelers players at those positions that I feel are very important over those who I think are going to be playing for the Vikings. And because of that, I think the Steelers win. I don't think it's a huge game, but I think it's 24-20. The Steelers find a way to win. 24-20 is my final score prediction. And that's been my prediction on this show. My show yesterday, Let's Ride. It's in the staff article. That's my prediction. Now, I want to ask you all for a bold prediction because I have one, but I want to go first because I don't want anyone stealing my bold prediction. Okay? Y'all ready? Jordan Berry, block punt.
Is he still on the Vikings? I forgot about that.
He is. Steelers get in there, get a hand on a punt, and I can celebrate like they just scored a touchdown. Maybe it will be a touchdown. I don't know. But they're going to get to Berry. Maybe it'll be like the Arizona Cardinals game where he gets just leveled. That would be great. Anyways, anyone else brought bold predictions? Did Brian, you have one?
Ray finally breaks one.
Ooh, that would be nice.
I was thinking about that one today. I'm like,
doesn't matter.
Yeah, he's due.
He breaks one.
If he does, then that's got to be a catapult to a Steelers victory. I am going to go with the bold prediction of the Steelers keep the lead the entire game.
Well, that would be rare. That would be rare. I like this
bold.
One. Yeah. I know. I like this one from Steeler Chick. Steeler Chick 46, bold prediction. BTR scores a rushing touchdown. He's been tucking it and running it more this year than he has in a long time. Sometimes it's a broken play, but we've seen Ben take off running before. Boy, It would be a throwback. It would be a throwback if he can get in the end zone with his legs. That'd be pretty cool. So Brian says my tree looks like it has cotton candy in it. No, they're just lights. Okay. Trivia. Brian, do you have some? I actually have one real quick. If you guys can appease me at some point. Brian, do you have one?
I actually do not this week.
Okay. Let me run mine by you guys real quick, and then we'll go to Dave. So I talked about 2005 earlier and how the Steelers did play Minnesota in Minnesota during that magical stretch, the final 4 games. The question is, and I know that Brian should get this right away. Can you tell me the 4 teams they played in the final stretch to make the postseason when they were 7-5? You don't have to give me the order, although that would be really impressive. We know the first game.
I can give you the order.
Okay, Dave, do you know? Because it's
going to take me a while to think of it. Because I'm going back. I can tell you
paired up with the NFC North that year. I'll give you a hint.
Yes, I know that Minnesota is. Why do every time I say Minnesota sound like I'm from Minnesota, or Manitoba? There's not a. I don't know. Wait, don't tell a Minnesota that they're close to Canada. You don't want to say that. So I'm going to say was Cleveland on the end of the schedule that year as well.
They were not the last game, but they were on there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Towards the end of the season. So I've got Minnesota. I've got Cleveland. I've got.
The game that started it all at Heinz Field.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to remember. Why can I not remember?
Snow game.
Okay, remember this was when I was still coaching, so it was
Urlacher.
Oh yeah, I watched. Yes, I remember because I watched that game with a couple of guys from the church I was going to at the time because I didn't even live in Hagerstown. They were Bears fans, and I'm just like, oh yeah. So they beat the Bears, at home.
Yes.
Then it would have been Minnesota. Was it Minnesota or Cleveland?
They go to Minnesota next. They go to Minnesota next. Mm-hmm. They beat them 18-3.
Okay.
And then they go to Cleveland, 41-0. I'll never forget the headlines. That was on Christmas Eve. It was seasons beatings. After that was the headline.
I got the last one because I remember.
I got to jump in on this real quick.
Okay,
Brian was there.
That was the Debo. I mean, the Christmas Eve game was the Debo spotty slamming a fan on Christmas Eve.
Yes,
the suplex game.
Yes,
he suplexed the fan.
Yes.
Now, but Brian, you were at that week 17 game, right?
Yes, I was.
The final game of the season. It was Jerome's last game at Heinz Field.
And the only reason I remember this, I'm pretty sure because it would have to be 2005 because it doesn't make sense any other time they were matched up against the NFC North. Is that they had an NFC North game as their final game of the season, and that was the one year that they finished off with the Detroit Lions, right? But that had to be 05 because I don't think it was 09.
Yes, it was Detroit Lions. The final score was 35-21.
All right.
Antoine Randall had a punt return in that game, and once Bettis had 3 touchdowns, and once again, that's the you've heard this ad nauseum. That's the day I realized that I was in love with the woman that would become my wife, because when they were yelling one more year to Bettis after the 3rd touchdown, because everybody knew that was his last game. I look over and a woman that never watched football but just started watching because of me was crying because they were chanting one more year. I'm like, all right, she's mine. I'm going to marry this woman. And I did.
There you go. And so that was a magical run. And I just want to say, like, there's nothing to say that there couldn't be some magic in this team too.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. Connor Eddy gives us $4.99, and I hate to say this, Connor, but I already know how we're going to answer this question.
What a waste of $5.
Thank you for your contribution, Connor.
Would you rather see the Steelers in the playoffs or get a higher draft pick? So Dave, go ahead.
Who cares about the draft? This is about winning. All you got to do is get in the dance, and you have a chance to win it all. You get to the playoffs. Playoffs.
Talking about practice. Brian, what about you? You want a higher draft pick, right?
If this team's 0-16 and they're playing the last game and they win that, I'm still rooting for this team to win. That's just how I am. I just don't think we're ever going to see it. So I don't think at this point with 6 wins that the draft pick is going to be as significant enough, because you take so much away from feeling good. The reason we watch the Steelers is to feel good. We don't watch them to be mad. I mean, it happens. They make us mad, sure, but we watch them to feel good when they win. I remember when they blew it by going 3 games out of 4 at the end of the 1988 season. And they won 3 out of 4, and they dropped down to, I believe, 9th. And that's when they got Tim Worley. But I'll take Tim Worley just for the fact that I was rooting for that team. Now, who were other guys higher in that draft? Troy Aikman, Deion Sanders, Barry Sanders, Derek Thomas, just to name 4. So, but you never know. If the Steelers do move up, they might take Tony Mandarich. You never know what's going to happen in any draft. And that's what could have happened in that draft, where they could have taken Broderick Thomas, who wasn't a good player, who went number 6 to the Buccaneers. So with all of that, I'm not thinking about the draft right now. I'll think about the draft after Valentine's Day. That's after the Steelers have their parade down in Orlando, Florida at Disney World, and Super Bowl MVP Najee Harris is lifting the trophy on the convertible with Mickey Mouse.
This fan base used to be a lot more hopeful. At least I remember it being more hopeful. I'm talking about back in the early 2000s, the late 90s. I remember those teams, whether it was Cordell at quarterback, and everyone just said, just get us in the playoffs. Just let us see if we can get in the playoffs and do some damage. Now it's kind of like, oh, we're not going to win anything anyways. And I understand being jaded, but my goodness, it used to be a lot more hopeful. All right, Dave, trivia time. You have something?
Yes, I do.
Let's do it.
I'm looking at Thursday games this season. And we've talked about teams going on the road and having to win a game on the road on the short week. Now, I included week 1, and we'll take it out later because right now there's been 15 games played on Thursday. What's the record of the visiting team so far this season out of 15 games?
I'm going to say they've only had 3 wins.
So you're saying 3-12?
Yes.
I'm going to see 5-10.
I will tell you this: the 3 games on Thanksgiving, which were all technically Thursday games, the visiting team won all 3 of them. The visiting teams are 9-6 this year.
Wow, I did not.
They are 9-6. Isn't that crazy? I mean, honestly, the visiting team is actually, now, like I said, there was 3 on Thanksgiving, but the visiting team has actually won 5 straight Thursday games so far this season. But if you go back and take the 3 out for Thanksgiving, you're talking about 3 straight weeks of the visiting team winning on Thursdays. The only team that was a home team that's won, or the one that was the last home team to win on Thursday, that would be the Miami Dolphins over the Baltimore Ravens. So yeah, but what's also crazy is I think the NFL set this up this way because even though they're out of 15 games. And I will tell you, week 1 was the home team winning one of those games. I'm throwing that one out because it's not a short week, if you know what I mean. So really, when you're talking about being on a short week, they're 9-5. So, but what the other thing that I can't believe is the visiting teams have actually been favored in 8 of the 15 games this season. So the NFL has specifically done it to where almost like they scheduled the games where they expected the better teams to be the visiting teams to try to give them more of a chance. So I just found that interesting.
No, that's interesting. That's very interesting. All right. Good stuff. All right. Final thoughts time. Brian, go ahead.
Just a couple of weeks ago, we thought it was going to be Counting Crows time. We thought it was going to be a long December. And now it feels like it's going to be an exciting December with this team. This team is going to go up. They're going to go down. Hopefully they're finding their momentum, and hopefully they're going to party like it's 2005. But I've got to say, I am riveted with everything that this team is doing, and I'm glad to be a part of just watching it and commenting on it.
Very good. Dave, final thoughts?
Final thoughts. This is the biggest game of the season, because it's the next one. And that's how the Steelers are having to play this for the last, they put themselves in that position. It's the biggest game of the season because it's the next one and they're in it. So that's why it's a big one. They need this one. Everything else, it falls in much easier if you can get this victory if you're trying to look big picture further ahead. So let's not even do that. Let's just go out there. You've proven that you can play hard and you can, put forth the effort, play with a lot of heart, and how it worked out playing against the Ravens. So you've got to show that you can do that in back-to-back games, even on a short week. Go get them.
Sean Manahan gives us $5. His a 5-star matchup because we in it. That's right. That was the slogan of 2008, 2019 that had the toughest schedule in the NFL. Ended up winning a Super Bowl that year. All right, that does it for us on the Steelers preview. Some of us might be back for the post-game show. If not, make sure you check us out wherever you get your podcasts or Steelers or Behind the Steel Curtain, and subscribe, follow, whatever you have to do so you don't miss a thing. Also, BehindTheSteelCurtain.com should be your one-stop shop for all things Steelers. All right, Dave, send us out.
Hey.
All right, we'll be back next week at some point, and stay tuned if you're on YouTube because coming up in about an hour is Know Your Enemy. So check it out. Enjoy that with Michael and Jeffrey, and go Danelle Hunter. We'll see you later. Take it easy.